welcome to a special show as the Thunder have beat the Dallas Mavericks. You know, it's pretty nice when you have superstars on your team like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander or like Anthony Edwards of the Timberwolves. These are special, special players, man. When you watch these guys, you're just like, oh my gosh. I mean, because the reason why I say that in that type of expression is they're not even close to their prime yet.
No, not even close, Grant. And it's almost like a changing of the guard. Jerry Reynolds said it earlier today. You don't have any of the mainstays really in the playoffs this year. And these guys are taking the opportunity and running with it. And I love it, Nabes.
I mean, I guess you could say SGA's in his prime, but clearly Anthony Edwards is not. You know, we can talk about the game that was just played, but I want to go back and talk about the Timberwolves.
Yeah.
You've been watching basketball a long time, obviously not as long as me because of my age. Are we talking about the Detroit Pistons? The way, and I'm not talking about the physicality, but I'm talking about the type of defense we're seeing. Do you ever recall watching defense the way the Timberwolves have been playing defense?
No, I don't. And especially in this NBA, Grant, they can just do it in just about any style. I mean, Grant, they turned over Jokic 11 times in 2 games.
I know.
And the way they close space, I'll kick that to you, Napes. It feels like when a team's going to have an opportunity, all of a sudden you got a Timberwolf in your face.
Yes, and it's that's why we always circle everything back with our comments to the Kings. That's why I think the Kings have to gamble, because if they don't gamble, they're not going to get to that tier. They're just not, in my opinion. And like for instance, the Halliburton for Sabonis trade was a gamble, regardless of whether you think it was a good trade or a bad trade. The reality was it was a gamble. You were taking a young player that had unbelievable promise and a very high ceiling, which we are seeing come to fruition now with Tyrese Halliburton, who's in round 2 of the playoffs, for a known caliber all-star. You already knew what you were getting in return. Indiana thought they knew what they were getting in return, but they didn't really know because he had not done it before. And I'm just wondering, Ryno, when you look at Edwards of Minnesota, when you look at SGA of Oklahoma City, and to a degree Luka of Dallas, but do the Kings, they don't have that type of a player, Ryan. And I just wonder if you can win, and by win, I'm talking about be really relevant in the Western Conference, or the Eastern for that matter, without that marquee guy.
I don't think you can, Grant. And I know Kings fans don't want to hear that. But in this NBA, you either have one of those marquee guys and you've got a ton of talent around them, or you spread it out. And the teams that have spread out the talent, you see it's not always working out when it comes down to playmaking in the playoffs. When you need a basket, that's the person you go to. And they're generational guys, Grant. And I would argue probably the most generational guy the Kings have had, Chris Webber. The fans would say,
maybe, maybe, the only other player that you could possibly put in that category would be Mitch Richmond.
Yeah. Now that you say that,
to me, Mitch was, I mean, they played different positions in a different era, shooting guard, power forward, but you could always count on Mitch to deliver in crunch time on both sides of the floor. Chris was not a crunch time player. He wasn't that wasn't who he was. That was who Mitch Richmond was. So when you say generational is a strong term to use when you're trying to define an athlete.
It is a very strong term that gets thrown around a lot, but I think one thing's clear. I don't think the Kings, even if we say Chris Webber, Mitch Richmond, there's not been that guy that has come through, but that doesn't just set the culture for that team, but sets the culture for the organization. You've seen that many times with greats in the past as well.
The problem with Chris, and Jerry and I have talked about this, and we've been very honest with this, Chris could have never been a generational player. Hang on, I got to plug something in here.
Yeah.
While I do this. So take this away for a minute. I forgot to plug in.
No worries. Yeah, Chris was a great player. I'm going to go back to Mitch because Mitch had good role players around him. He was the guy they built around, but it wasn't enough. He needed a little bit more help, but it didn't stop him from bringing it every damn night. So the question becomes, is one of those players, and maybe I'm a little strong in saying generational, but do you have a player of that caliber on the Kings now? Have they maxed out their potential? Could Fox or Sabonis take the steps you're seeing the young guys take early in their careers and having success?
All right, I think I'm back with you here. To me, generational player, you got me, right, Ryno?
Yep, I got you loud
All
and
right.
clear.
Generational player to me means on and off the floor. It means all the intangibles. Do you make the players around you better, right? Do the players in the locker room gravitate towards you? Can you put a team on your back like Anthony Edwards has done, right? Can we just say that? Okay.
Absolutely.
Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has done. Can you put a team on your back and still win? That to me, LeBron's done it. Kobe did it. Michael did it. Shaq did it. I mean, we can go on and talk about Dirk Nowitzki did it. Okay. And again, I'm missing out some. Okay. Steph Curry to a degree, I think, did that. See, the Kings to me don't have that player, and I think you make a great distinction. The Kings really have never had that player. Now, I got to tell you, Ryan, I really thought that last year, after watching De'Aaron Fox in the fourth quarter and in the playoffs until he broke his finger, I really thought that was the player that was emerging, right? I felt so good about the future of the Kings, Ryno, because I thought that Fox could be that player. But he regressed this year in that department, and not just on the floor, blowing off the media for 3 weeks, body language, looking disinterested at times. That's not a generational talent. It's just not.
No, it's not, and especially a talent that's been here 7 years. It's not like it's his first couple years in the league. You know him well. One big thing, Grant, that you mentioned about those greats, or I should say we didn't mention, and in relation to Fox, Fox sometimes has those flashes. And I think that's why Kings fans, why we say he could take that step, because we see the potential. But all the names you named before him, consistency, Grant. They do it on a consistent basis, or they did do it on a consistent basis. And you said it all season. And I think that's the key to it. He did regress, but some fans see it not as a regression because he was hitting more threes, taking more threes, which has been the unofficial debate of the offseason. Does taking more threes for De'Aaron's game actually hold him and the rest of the team back? And it's a question that I think the Kings have a short timeline to answer at this point, because one thing we've seen about these playoffs so far is Jerry Reynolds said it perfectly today on the 2:00 show. You are seeing a passing of the torch in the playoffs. If you see these guys continue to have the success like Anthony Edwards and SGA have, Grant, they change games. They change game plans.
I am going to let you get to Condog. I'm going to log on and log back off and get the camera going, okay?
All right, I got you. Let's bring in for the second time Condog. What's happening tonight, buddy?
Man, oh man, did the Thunder just take over the game?
Yeah.
Oh, man, it was pretty good in the first half, but that second half, man, especially the fourth quarter, they just ran with it. Mavericks just looked out of gas to me, but maybe, the Thunder are just that team, and it's going to be, the young gun Shai versus the young gun Anthony Edwards.
It very well could be. And to think about that, if you think about the NBA, it's two smaller markets. It doesn't matter. You have two stars, and I would love to see them go head to head. I think the thing about OKC that many people are underestimating is how physical they can be. You saw how much they wore the Mavericks down. SGA got to the line 11 times in the first half, Condog.
Yeah. Again, I totally, believe that small market thing doesn't bring ratings because even last year, Kings Warriors first round was the highest first round in like 16 years or something like that. And again, yeah, the Warriors had our big market, but we were also half, small market,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I would believe it can go, it just depends if you have the guys on the court because,
Bingo.
because that's the thing. What markets the players best? Well, if they have a shoe deal or something, Luca, he's got his deal. His new ones just came out, and Dallas is the more football town. It's a big city, but it's a football town.
Sure. Yeah. Football's number one in Dallas. I think the other thing that's undeniable, though, is if you have two young guys like this and there's that level of basketball going on, because we're not talking about, 63 pointers a game right now in the playoffs. We're seeing hard nosed basketball. And when you see that much skill on a court, eyeballs are inevitably going to flock to it.
Oh yeah, I absolutely am loving this style because honestly, I got very sick of teams trying to do what the Houston Rockets did with Harden and Chris Paul and just chuck up threes because it was just hard to watch. It hurt my eyeballs a lot because you could get anybody off the street and just hit threes. Like if that's all you're gonna run and just say analytics, I would love to get paid to do that. Just stand in the corner, wait for an opening, and shoot it.
It's a good job if you can get it, no doubt. Napes, we got you back.
Yeah, I'm back. I before we got to Condog, the point I was trying to make about I don't know Anthony Edwards. I only know what I read about them and what others say about him. And it's the same with SGA. And when people talk about these individuals, they don't only talk about their attributes on the court, they talk about how great they are off the court. And, when your best player is your hardest worker, when your best player has those intangibles, it makes your life so much easier as a coach. Like, look at Nikola Jokic last year. The guy has no ego, right?
None.
He didn't even want to go to the parade. He wanted to go home back to Serbia. No, think about that for a minute. He didn't
Yeah.
want all the accolades. He didn't want to be like a me guy. He was just like one of the guys on the team. And when your superstar is like that, like Dirk Nowitzki was like that. I mean, that's who Dirk Nowitzki was. Rick Carlisle used to tell us, he said, hey, listen, when your best player, when your superstar is the best player, both on and off the floor, and everyone gravitates to him, then you've got a great situation.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Tim Duncan was another guy like that. Hell, even Tim Duncan would only dress in just jeans and like a t-shirt or something. He wouldn't even dress flashy.
Tim
Yeah,
Duncan's another one. Yeah.
And on the court too, Grant, you know what those players do for the other guys? When teams fill out their rosters and they say, we need a 3-and-D guy, we need a guy that can come in and give us 8. When they come in, inevitably, they're able to get to the spots. They get to the things that they do best because so much attention is on that superstar. And inevitably, you're not asking more of the role players than you need to.
And Condog and Ryan, I'm not talking about like this being doom and gloom for the Kings because they don't have Anthony Edwards and they don't have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They've got good players, okay? And they can still be relevant in the West. But in order to be more than relevant, I think they got to roll the dice here and get really creative if they can.
Yeah, I agree. And also, if you really think about it, if we just, didn't have to play the Pelicans 6 times, we could have been a 50-win team just off of that. Like if we only have to play them 3 times.
You could have had 49. Well, I mean, you lost all 3 games to Houston too. You lost a game to Detroit. You lost a game to Washington. You lost a game to Charlotte. You lost games to the very worst teams in the NBA. Now, in all fairness, even your best teams are going to get upset and they're going to lose a game that they shouldn't have lost. I mean, that's part of sports, especially when you play 82 games. Maybe you have your best player out. Maybe you had your 2 best players out. Maybe it's your 3rd game in 4 nights in different time zones, cross country, like the Kings had when they were in Orlando, 1 day off, and then had to come home and play a back-to-back. I mean, there are reasons why you get upset and lose to bad teams, But the really good teams, those losses are minimal. Like you might have one during the year, guys. You might have two. But with the Kings, even though they won 46 games this year, you need two hands. You need fingers on both hands to talk about all the bad losses they had this year. And you can't have that.
Yeah, there was an interesting stat I saw about the Mavericks this year. 41, half of their games, they were leading at the third quarter, and they went 39-2 in those games. So
there you have it.
So pretty much, if they took the lead, they controlled it. They didn't get sloppy, and they finished the job.
Yeah. Speaking of finishing the job, Luka was terrible tonight. He only had 19 points on 19 shots, and he missed 7 of 8 for beyond the arc. The Thunder, boy, raise your hand. And again, it's only one game, so I'm not getting ahead of myself, but I'm just doing this for the sake of our audience. Raise your hand if you had the Thunder playing the Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals this year.
Gordo? Pause? No? Okay.
Now, hey, listen, I don't normally pat myself on the back, but I've been telling everyone for a year now
yes, you have,
to watch out for the Oklahoma City Thunder. However, I did not think they would be as prolific as they were this year. I thought they'd be a clear playoff team. I said it. I said, watch out for the Thunder. They're going to be really good. They're going to be really good. They're better than really good. They're really, really good. Now, I think this series has still got a ways to go, but the Thunder look dominant tonight. They look very good.
Yeah, they're looking, like they're number one seed. They're looking like, we were the best team, and they're playing like it. And the Timberwolves, and the Nuggets, they were all, same division, same conference, about the same record. And the T-Wolves are also playing like they were, right there teetering on a number one seed.
Yeah.
And so is Boston.
Yeah, Boston, they're going to be hard to beat. Kondo, good to have. Go ahead. I'll give you the final word, buddy.
I'm actually going to say Knicks in 7. That's my final.
Knicks in 7, huh?
Yep.
Wow. You think they're going to beat Indiana and then beat Boston if Boston wins against Cleveland?
You know what? I think Boston's is going to come out of the East. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Right. Thanks, Kondo.
Speaking of the Knicks, they got another injury. Mitchell Robinson, their backup center's done for the playoffs. So, Tibbs might have to go with a 6-man rotation.
Napes, that's going to be a big deal because he plays so few. He went 8 last game, but there's a young guy. I can't say his name correctly, so I'm not going to say it. Patrick, if you're in the chat, help me out. Patrick's been talking about him, but he has a lot of promise, hasn't got a ton of minutes. We'll see how he steps into that role.
All right. Again, the final tonight, 117-95. The Thunder, Minnesota. I guess the question right now in that series, I know Michael Malone very well. I can tell you it's not been pleasant in the Nuggets locker room area and their training facility today, and it won't be tomorrow. The Nuggets aren't going to go down easily. I'm not saying they're going to win, but don't be surprised if the Nuggets go and win game 3. That would not shock me. They're very proud. They're very good. I guess what's concerning to me, if I'm looking at this from Denver's perspective, the Timberwolves' best defensive player, Rudy Gobert, wasn't on the floor, and they still held on the 80 points.
Yeah, but I think in some ways that helps with the athleticism because you get more Naz Reid. And I think that it actually benefits the Timberwolves to a degree. But it is a point of concern. And Grant, in fact, I'm going to go a step further. I think it's a must-win game 3 because they've got to have a little momentum going in to try to get that game 4 in Minnesota. And I don't know, T-Wolves yet to lose yet, Napes. They're leading the league in playoff scoring and the defense you mentioned at the top.
Yeah, listen, if I think we know if they do not win game 3, I'm talking about the Denver Nuggets, they're done. They're not coming back from down 3. And we talk about matchups. The matchups certainly look to favor Minnesota, don't they? I mean, they didn't just win the second game. They went in there and handled business in game 1.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, Jokic, 11 turnovers in 2 games.
Yeah.
That's unlike Jokic. You got Murray throwing heating pads onto the court, Napes. And
not talking to the media after the game. And I came down hard on him on this morning's rant. You can't do that.
No.
You can't blow up the media. You just can't do that. Can't do it.
Especially this time of year when your team's struggling, it's when they need you the most.
Yeah. All right, I want to talk to you about Bennett's Restaurants and their tremendous happy hour prices. All right, so they are there with their sips and taste. All right, we're talking about extensive. Let me learn how to talk for a living. Okay, maybe I should have you do this, Ryan. They got many signature cocktails. They got wines by the glass that are at unbeatable prices, all options under $14. Many priced from under $6. And it's not just the drinks. They've got the food. You have all kinds of offers for you, all kinds of selections, comfort foods you can share, and it's not going to break the bank.
No,
Every day, nope, every day 2 to 6. So whether you're in the mood for something savory or sweet, they've got you covered. Get to Bennett's. They got 3 locations: Sacramento, Roseville, this West Side Grill in Rockland. And if you get to bennettsrestaurants.com, you can check out everything they have to offer. You can make a reservation. They have it all for you. That's bennettsrestaurants.com.
Grant, the bars too at the West Side Grill and the one off of Howe and Fair Oaks, they are so cool to sit at.
Oh,
big U's,
yep.
Lots of
Yep.
interaction. Great happy hour, like Nape said.
What I love about Bennett's too, all 3 locations have their distinctive style and ambiance. They're all different, and I really like that. Like Howe and Fair Oaks, I love going there because my son lives about a half mile from there. So whenever we decide we're going to go to Bennett's, we always go to that location, and it's so different than Roseville, and it's different than being out in Rockland, and I like that. You have the same menu, exactly the same with the great food, but you're in a different locale with a different ambiance, and I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We sometimes do a little Top Golf. We said, screw that food. We just go up 65 a little bit further, and we hit the West Side Grill, sit on that beautiful patio, Napes. Nailing it, my friend.
All right, let's get to Zach. Go ahead. You want to bring Zach on?
Yeah, let's do it. Zach, welcome on to Open Forum Tuesday.
Can you hear me?
Zach? Yep,
Hello?
go ahead. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, this OKC team is just like a lot of fun to watch. They honestly kind of remind me, and I think they could honestly be the next big dynasty in the NBA, like a lot like the Warriors were in the 2010s. Does that seem valid?
I'm not ready to go there, Napes.
I'm not either.
Okay, I was just saying like because they're a lot of fun to watch, and like the Warriors were a lot of fun to watch during that time. As far as I wanted to talk about like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the biggest thing I see with him versus Fox is body language and demeanor, and he's just like he's so collected with his team, where Fox has kind of just become like his own self.
Listen, I'm not going to put De'Aaron Fox in the same category as SGA because I don't think that's fair. I think Fox is very good, but he's not superstar very good like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. SGA is without any question about it. He's the franchise of Oklahoma City. All right, he's the man, and he's the reason why they are where they are. Similarly to other great players. Brunson with the Knicks. You think the Knicks are the number 2 seed in the East without Brunson? I mean, these are very special players. They're very special players. Plain and simple. They're special players. And the Kings, again, I don't want to like bury De'Aaron Fox and say that, but he is pretty much who he is now. We've seen him for what, 7 years?
7 years. It's a great point.
Like, okay, so that's who you are. You're not going to change. And at times he takes your breath away, and at times you're just like, oh my God, right? And then the very next game, we're on the postgame show talking about, gee, what happened to De'Aaron Fox tonight? Or, gee, he didn't look like he was into it, or, like that. You can't have that.
You know what's different to me about these guys, and you're right, Grant, and it's not good to compare them because Fox obviously speed, those two that we were talking about, strength. Yep. But the other two, they're throwbacks. They said, look, you guys want to play this 3-ball basketball and shoot it 50 times? Do it. We're going to beat you the way basketball is supposed to be played. And look what's prevailing right now in the playoffs.
Well, again, you look at this from Dirk, and he's spot on. Brunson with 4 straight playoff games with 40 points per game. Think about that for a minute.
In New York with
I know.
not a ton of help. He gets help, but you know what he's doing? I asked Jerry Reynolds about this. I've not seen a guy, maybe SGA, as crafty as Brunson. I remember Mike Bibby's time here. He wasn't the fastest, but he was crafty. It was body positioning. It was certain things getting to your spots. And Brunson has the best of both worlds there.
I don't agree about this comment about Brunson. You say Anthony Edwards is a star, Alberto. I see him being the next face of the NBA. Brunson is going off this season, but he's too small, in my opinion, only 6'2" and a little older at 28. 6'2" is fine if you play the way Brunson does. Nobody's been able to stop him all year. 28 is still very much in your prime. So I don't disagree about your Edwards part, but, Brunson plays on the biggest stage in the world, in the most famous arena in the world, at Madison Square Garden. And the no one was able to stop Brunson this year. Well, look at what he did against Sacramento, Ryan. I mean, we saw it. Oh my gosh. But I mean, and that was with Keon Ellis on him. He abused Keon Ellis. He abused Davion Mitchell. Look at what he's done in the playoffs. So it doesn't really matter. You either can play or you can't play. If you're 6'2", it really doesn't matter. Isaiah Thomas was an MVP candidate for the Celtics before he got injured, and he's not anywhere near 6'2". So a lot of that's overrated. If you're really good, it really doesn't matter.
No, and he's durable as hell, too. Knock on wood for Brunson there. I want to ask you a question, though, and go back to something that you were talking about with Condog. You said the Kings probably need to make a bigger move, basically get comfortable being uncomfortable. Do you think that's accelerated now because of what's happening in the West?
Yes.
They expected the West to be better, but I don't think this much better, especially with the two teams we're talking about.
I don't know how you can be a general manager and look back at what Oklahoma City's doing, what Minnesota's doing with the roster that Denver has. Okay, if I just keep it to those 3 teams. And I also am very well aware that Memphis, if they're healthy, is going to be right in the mix again next year in all likelihood. And then look at my roster and look at all the fluctuation and look at all the bad losses I had this year and look at my point differential, which was the worst of all of these teams that we're mentioning, and say to myself, we'll just bring back the same team and we'll be better. You will not be better. And if you lose Malik Monk, you're going to have a very difficult time obtaining 46 wins, which you had this year.
So maybe here's my question, because you said last night, and you make some good points there. You think Malik is closer to going than staying. Is part of the piece of the puzzle this, that we may lose Malik Monk for nothing?
Very possible.
Should he have been shopped? Was he shopped? I mean, think about it. We ended up playing without him the second half, or towards the tail end of the season, and you saw how it worked out, but he could have commanded a little bit of a price, and it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, but same thing somewhat happened with Bogey too, Napes.
Yeah, you lost Bogey for nothing, which was a really bad move. That was the one mistake that Monty McNair has made that to me is glaring. I think he's done a really good job.
Yes,
but that was not a good job. And boy, if you lose Malik Monk for nothing, oh boy. I keep on hearing Orlando and the rumors about Orlando that they could do it financially. They can give more money. Do they really want Malik Monk? I think Monk would go to Orlando in a heartbeat. I've told you about his affinity for golf. He could play golf year round and be on the court doing what he does. He could probably start for Orlando. I mean, there are a lot of attractive things there. And, the people that think, well, gee, he wants to be with De'Aaron Fox, that's a bunch of garbage, okay? That doesn't factor into it at all, okay? Malik Monk, this is what it matters to him. Who's going to pay him the most? Okay, that's what he's looking for.
Napes, don't you think starting plays into that? I've got to think starting in Sacramento softens the blow of the 17.4 if he stays.
Yeah, but here's the problem with that. If you sign a long-term deal, you may be playing for a new coach next year. And the new coach comes in and doesn't want you to start. Then what do? Then you're disgruntled, you're unhappy, you got a long-term deal. Now you're all of a sudden you're back on the bench. I'm very careful, or I would be very careful if I'm in the front office of letting someone know that they're going to start or they're not going to start.
Yeah,
That would be that I wouldn't go there.
sure, but doesn't it deserve a little bit of attention? Because Jerry said it many times. He does not see a single basketball reason why Malik hasn't gotten a start at some point. And I would like to know what that is, because there were times
Yeah.
guys were down and he still did not start.
I'm with you. I don't quite understand that. I really don't. You would think that when you look at what his skill set is, and here's the other thing, Ryan, we always just automatically assume his 3-point shooting and scoring. Look at how many assists he had this year.
Yes, absolutely, Grant. He unlocked that second unit, and he unlocked something in Sabonis's game. Malik Monk made Sabonis better when they were on the floor together.
I want to tell you about Sunrise Landing in Colusa. Go to ColusaSunrise.com and check out Sunrise Landing from Blazona Development. 6 models to choose from. Great access to I-5, Highway 20, Highway 45, across from the Country Club. Colusa is a beautiful community. And if you go to ColusaSunrise.com, you can check out everything that they've going on at Sunrise Landing. That's ColusaSunrise.com and Sunrise Landing. Good to have you with us on a somewhat of a special show. And that's why we always encourage people to subscribe. That way you'll always know when we're doing a show, whether it's solo. Ryan's got his show every day at 2:00. I do my shows periodically, not on a regular routine such as Ryno, but we got it all for you. We got you covered. And we're going to be with you. The lottery's coming up. We've got the NBA draft that we're going to be zeroing in on. Then free agency starts, summer league. So, Ryno, we're going to be right here doing a lot of shows. So if you subscribe, you'll always know when we're coming your way.
Amen, Grant. And we are going to have wall-to-wall coverage on the draft, because that 13th pick, if it ends up being the 13th pick, is probably one of the most important things that happens this offseason besides Monk Combine coming up. So we'll break down the prospects and let you know what we're hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have everyone with us. Keep the questions coming. And if you want to join us on the show, it is easy to do so. All right, so let's talk. You don't play Game 3 until Friday, so it gives Denver a chance to get off the mat. Don't you think we're going to see an A game from the Nuggets for Game 3?
I would think you have to, and it's got to be an A first quarter. They've struggled out of the gate. If they can just start there and be competitive and put the ball in the hoop, I think it's a Mike Malone team. You know what you're going to get. You laid it out earlier. Jokic, as much as he loves his horses, he also loves basketball too.
Yeah.
And Jamal Murray, no suspension, only gets fined. So if they don't come out, man, can you imagine a Mike Malone halftime speech?
$100,000 fine.
Yes,
and again,
$100K.
Listen, I know that players can afford that easily, but generally it's the obligatory $25,000 fine. $100,000, they're sending a message. And I know that to an NBA player, that's not going to set them back, but still that's a sizable fine that was levied by the NBA.
You know what, Napes? I think the message was, and this is my take, if you look at it closely, that thing lands at the feet of an official. Had that hit an official, I think we're talking about a whole different story.
If that hit an official, I'm not so sure he's not suspended a minimum of 5 games.
It's no different than putting hands on an official. It's using an object.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Napes.
NBA Guru here checking in on the chat line saying the Wolves are a 4.5-point favorite. Crazy. Why is that crazy? They're at home. They're dominant at home. They've kicked the ass of the Nuggets 2 games. Why is that crazy?
He's probably thinking the spread should be more for the Nuggets based off the last 2 games. Jamal Murray, is he dinged up? Everybody's dinged up this time of year. I know he's missed some practice leading into this series, but it's Porter. You know who we talked about? Porter and Aaron Gordon. Those are the 2 guys that the Nuggets have really been missing that extra offense from these last couple games.
It's a very good point. That is, Denver's not going to go in and beat Minnesota without those 2 really contributing. Not going to happen.
Yeah, and without them playing physical too, and without fouling, because they've got to match up with that front line, and they've got to get second opportunities. Usually Denver's a little bit better at that.
Yeah. Another overtime in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Stars and the Avalanche getting ready to go in overtime. The Rangers tonight and the Hurricanes in double overtime. Woo. I know you're not in the hockey like I am, but boy, the overtime in hockey is just great. I love it. I love it. Absolutely love it.
be a pig in mud right now. This time of
Oh,
year, there's so much
I love it.
hockey on, you can't even
I know.
watch it all.
I love it. It's great stuff. So tomorrow you're gonna be on at 2:00, right?
2:00
And
right here.
yeah, it's a good time slot. I like the 2:00. It's before all the games start. You get, everything going. I like that. That's a good time.
Yeah, we get everybody ready for their drive home.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
Sacramento sports, all sports right
I
here on
love
If
it.
You Don't Like That.
I love it. Hey, I want to talk to you about New Works Plumbing. They are there for you for your plumbing needs and repairs. Just go to sackserviceplumbing.com or call the number on your screen. Again, sackserviceplumbing.com. New Works Plumbing, they've got a fix for you. And remember, they're available around the clock 24/7 for all of your plumbing needs and repairs. That's New Works Plumbing. They've got a fix for you. Gut feeling, okay?
Okay.
I said I think it's more likely than unlikely that Fox is playing elsewhere next year. You last week you agreed with that. Do you still agree with that?
Are we saying at the start of the season or any time throughout the
No.
season?
That before we even get through the first week of July, he'll be on a different team.
No, I think he will still be in Sacramento the first
Really?
week of July.
Okay.
Yeah, I do, unless he's part of a draft day deal, because Grant, that's the first time they can trade that pick is actually on draft day. I mean, I wouldn't, Grant, which way do you go there? If you're a team that it kind of likes Keegan Murray, but you're willing to take on Fox, who you giving up?
Well, if you're going to trade De'Aaron Fox, you're going to need a point guard. Okay, I mean, and they don't grow on trees, so you need to find a very serviceable point guard. Can you do it? Well, the Knicks did it. Dallas, I still think, for whatever reason, couldn't keep Brunson, and he ends up in New York. So, but those are few and far between.
Yeah, they are few and far between. If Monk comes back, maybe. I don't know. I mean, let's see what they do on the open market. Grant, there's going to be teams that have to make some tough decisions on the cap. And I think the MLE is really where you're going to see most of the action with signings. But I just think De'Aaron Fox, if I look at the guys, if I look at Fox, I look at Sabonis, and I look at Keegan Murray, and I say, which of these three which one is not the most conducive to Mike Brown's style? It's got to be De'Aaron Fox. I mean, you could almost make an argument Davion Mitchell fits a better role as a starting point guard for a traditional Mike Brown team.
Okay, so that would be a monumental change of plans if you move De'Aaron Fox. And if you move De'Aaron Fox, it changes the entire makeup of your team without even knowing what you would get back in return. I think we could say it changes the entire dynamic of your franchise.
It does, but I think depending on what you get back, it may extend this little window, whatever you want to call it, for the Kings. It's definitely not as big as it was going into the postseason with the jumps the teams we've talked about have made. But I don't know that the Kings aren't past that point of consideration of saying we need to shake it up, because Grant, it has. You just said it. It's been 7 years.
All right. There is a guy that I'm hearing about that's available, and I love his game. And I think he could start. He would be a different type of a starter, and that's Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones has started before. He's run teams before. He's extremely good. I know this year, even, with Washington, I'm bringing up his numbers right now. He averaged 7.3 assists. Okay. And I like him. I think he's a really good player. Now, do I think he's better than De'Aaron Fox? No, but he's a different type of a player than De'Aaron Fox. And if you trade, and again, we're just having fun here. We're not saying the Kings are trading De'Aaron Fox. No, see, Dirk, I'm not saying that. I didn't say for Fox. You didn't hear me say trade De'Aaron Fox for Tyus Jones. Did I say that? I didn't say that. What I said was that he's a player that I would definitely try to get in Sacramento if I could get him. Okay? That's separate from De'Aaron Fox. If the Kings decide that they're going to go in a different direction from De'Aaron Fox, you're going to have to get an all-star caliber player or an all-star back in return. Okay? And then we would have to wait and see what position does that player play in. What's their position? All right. Are they a 2 guard? Are they a small forward? What do they play? Then you can figure it out. But I'm just saying, Tyus Jones to me would be a guy that would be tremendous to have on the roster.
Yeah, pick and roll too. My
Yeah.
goodness, that would be really good fit. I mean, I guess where this gets interesting is there is some all-stars that could be on the move during this free agency period once trades open up with the new operating season for the league at Jimmy Butler, Grant, and we are just playing around. He may be on his way out of Miami. What's Jimmy Butler do for this Kings team without a De'Aaron Fox on it?
I would take Jimmy Butler in a heartbeat for the Sacramento Kings. I think he gives the Kings every single thing that they need, and that is a true dog that can play both ends of the floor, that's got that bravado with him, that is going to take guys and put them on his back and go, let's go. Like,
Yes.
if you could get Jimmy Butler, I would love. I think that would be perfect for Sacramento. Perfect.
See, and these are the scenarios that we got to start thinking about as a fan base, not just for De'Aaron, but anybody on this roster, because I really don't think anybody's touchable, as you've said, and many others have.
You know, the problem with Butler is he does have a lot of attrition on him, and he's not healthy all the time. You know, we're seeing him because of his style and the way he plays. That would concern me a little bit. But, you know, if I'm looking at a 2-year window, you know, the question is he going to be able to play at a good level for more than 2 years? And I would say probably not. I think I read where he's 34 right now. He's in a really good condition, really good shape, 34, but he is 34. So to me, I'd be getting him for a short term, 2 years at the most.
And I don't think that's a bad play, because that's about what you have Keegan for another 2 years. And then here's the other thing, assuming that Keegan would stay in that scenario, you don't need Jimmy Butler to be an all-star every night. You need Jimmy
No.
Butler just to be on the floor and be Jimmy Butler, because you can put that on Sabonis. You can put that on Keegan. You can slide Keegan over now. I think it opens up different roles, different flexibilities that Mike Brown may not have.
Yeah. So, you know, again, there are all kinds of possibilities.
Oh, yeah.
I go back to my premise is if you bring back the same roster and expect different results, then you're fooling yourself. You just are.
Oh, there's no way they can bring back the same roster. None. If they were to run it, Grant, you can't run it back again. You have dropped back compared to the West more than you projected. I just think it would be
You
devastating.
didn't even make the playoffs, Ryan. You didn't
I
even make the
know.
playoffs.
Exactly right. And you win 2 less games than the year before.
Yeah. And again, when you look at what's going on in the playoffs this year, see, here's the problem. You look at Oklahoma City, they're a young team. Okay.
Very.
You look at Minnesota, and their nucleus is like, wow, they're going to be together for a couple of years in all likelihood. You look at the San Antonio Spurs, and you project that Victor Wembanyama could take over this league. Okay. I mean, let's just call it the way it is. We could be talking about him in 2 years the same way we're talking about Anthony Edwards and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander right now, Ryan. We
Absolutely.
could.
Absolutely.
And then so all these teams are passing you by. You're good. And again, I think the Kings are a good team, but you're being passed by. The Rockets are a team that you can't take your eye off. And then we don't even talk about Memphis because they had so many issues this year with Morant's suspension, then the injury, then Marcus Smart. You know, when you look at those three, when you have those three or those two with Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr., that's a pretty damn good roster.
It is. We were worried about Memphis when they were all together last year before the jaw issues and him being moved off the floor. And then what are the Clippers going to do? I mean, we're not giving them a lot of run now because they just got bounced out of the playoffs, Grant, but they were considerably better this year. And if they don't make changes, you still got to figure they're going to be somewhere in the same neighborhood they were this year.
It's just, again, when you look at the West, okay, it is just wow. All right, I want to get to this. Grant Ryan, the eye test says DeMarcus Cousins is 1 or 1A behind C. Webb at worst. Boogie is the most talented, most gifted player to ever put on a Kings jersey along with C. Webb. I don't disagree with that, okay? But here's what you're missing. Talent does not win alone in the NBA. You can be the most talented player, arguably, in the history of a franchise, like DeMarcus Cousins. But if you have everything else that is an absolute zero next to your name, okay, leadership, turmoil, suspensions, coach killer, we can go bullying people, bullying the media. I'll just stop right there. It doesn't really matter if you're Michael Jordan-esque. You're not going to win. Same with Chris Webber. Chris had a lot of baggage. And the reason why Chris doesn't have a ring is because of Chris. Okay? Chris would not allow himself to conform to a team aspect when they really needed it to be that way. Prime example, when he came back after his knee injury in March, the Kings had the best record in the NBA. The best record in the NBA. A lot of fans forget about that. Without Chris Webber the entire season, they had Brad Miller, they had Vlade, they had Peja. They were playing really well.
Humming.
They had the best record in the NBA. Chris would not think about going to the bench. Rick Adelman was handcuffed, okay? And the Kings ended up being a 500 team the rest of the regular season with Chris Webber starting. They went from the best record in the NBA to a 500 team, and then they lost in the second round in the playoffs. Had Chris Webber had the personality and the professionalism to go, hey, man, you guys are rolling. I don't want to screw this up, coach. Bring me off the bench. Play me, but I don't want to screw up what we got going on. That is so anti-Chris. That is so against Chris Webber's personality that Chris would not allow that to happen, which is another reason when I look at Chris, as talented as he was, he didn't have the intangibles. DeMarcus has 0 intangibles. He doesn't even have one intangible, not one. Gifted, again, I think arguably, you could make the argument he's the most talented player in the Sacramento Kings history.
Yeah.
Since moving from Kansas City in 1985. You could make that argument, but he didn't have anything else. He wasted his entire NBA career because of who he was. As one person put it to me, from the neck down, I'm dealing with a man, and from the neck up, I'm dealing with a third grader. That's a perfect description of DeMarcus Cousins. Perfect.
I don't have anything to add to that. Let's bring in the guru joining us here on a Tuesday night. What's up, Zach?
How you guys doing?
How are you?
Good. Just want to talk about some of these trade things that you guys are kind of bringing up. Like I know Grant's considered a Keegan for Brandon Ingram type of trade, or I know Ryno.
I would not do that. I would not take Brandon Ingram. He's only played 70 games or more once in his career. I can't take a guy that averages, playing 60 games a year. I would stay away from that because of the injury and how often he's not in the lineup. So I would not. I would not do that.
Yeah, I agree. Like Jimmy Butler, I would stay away from Jimmy Butler too, just because of his age and how many games he plays a year. He's just not. He's not trustworthy in the regular season. If we make the playoffs, he's trustworthy, I guess. But even then, it's a risk. So I wouldn't do anything like that. Honestly, for the Kings to type the one player that I can kind of see that can happen, especially if we lose Malik Monk, is Zach LaVine, because I think we could get him on a slight discount. And I know he's not very trustworthy and he's always injured, but he at least is a little cheaper price. There might be a way we can get something like a Herter, Barnes, and maybe like a Davion and maybe a pick or something. What do you guys think about Zach LaVine if we can get him at a price like that?
Well, I like Zach LaVine, but again, we talk about a guy that seems to be missing a lot of games due to his body, and that concerns me. But as far as that type of a player, I've always liked Zach LaVine. I'm a big fan of his.
If you're Monty, do you take that risk? And because you got to do something because he's going to have to do something. We can't just stand around and not do any moves, and it's got to be something decent, especially if we lose Monk. I mean, let's just say we lose Monk. He almost has to make that trade just to get some excitement and have a chance at playoffs. Hopefully he's healthy for the year, Zach LaVine. And I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about that?
To me, Zach, with the Western Conference being as volatile and good as it is at this point, I don't know that I want Zach LaVine under contract through 26-27. I mean,
Yeah.
he's going to be making that year $48.9 million.
Too much.
And
Too much.
for that player, to me, just what Grant said,
Too much.
it's too much. Yes.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree with you guys. And then for Fox, I know Grant's saying that there's a chance Fox might not be playing for us in the year or coming up. But what do you think we could get back? Because I don't think we get back equal value for sure. And usually, when we're trading someone in his prime, it's hard to get someone also that's going to be just as good or in their prime as well. The Tyrese and Sabonis trade is actually a good, like, kind of an outlier example of how, like, both players were young, both players are contributing immediately kind of thing. Fox, I don't know. I just don't see it to get someone like that back.
Fox has played 7 playoff games in his entire career. He's never gotten out. So he's never won a playoff series. And why would you be so resistant to trade a player that has been with you now? What is it, 7 years or is it 8 years?
7 years.
Or 7 years. And I'm not saying it's all his fault, but I'm not so sure he's the guy anymore. I guess that's where I'm at. And it's like a quarterback in the NFL. You look at a quarterback and he's good, right? But you watch him play every year. You look at Derek Carr, okay? The Raiders came to a decision after 10 years that you're not going to win with Derek Carr, even though he wows you at times. And you look at Derek Carr at times and he has games and you're like, wow, this is the guy. And then all of a sudden, you look at him play 2 bad games in a row and you're like, can never win with him. I just wonder, and maybe that's not the greatest analogy, Derek Carr, De'Aaron Fox, but I'm trying to paint the picture for you in how I'm looking at De'Aaron Fox now. At some point, you got to try something different.
Yeah, I guess I'm just more on the side that it's more the team around him than Fox, just because of the value you can get back. Plus, if we're doing the Carr metaphor, Carr needed an offensive line. He needed a great offensive line, and that's when the Raiders did well, and wide receiver. So I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I think Fox needs a little bit better team and mostly playmakers, because that was the problem with the Kings. Fox was the only one that could play make, and it makes him look bad that he's the only one that can do it. Like in that, the New Orleans Pelicans game was the pinnacle of that. No one else could do anything other than Fox, and Fox had a chuck the whole time and not getting any good shots.
But
yeah, but you're right. He didn't play well in the second half, Ryan, and that's in the Pelicans game, the biggest game of the year, and he stunk in the second half, Ryno.
He did stink in the second half. You're right, and he had 3 back-to-back plays that were just awful between the third and the fourth quarter. But I guess the question for me is, like, when I look at the setup, he's got 2 All-Star, or he has an All-Star playing against or playing with him, Zach. And then for Fox, just the inconsistency. I mean, if he's giving you an A, he gives you an A. If he's giving you an F, he gives you an F. And when you talk about not having enough playmakers, when the Kings made this resurgence and Mike Brown came back to Sacramento, this was pretty much the roster they had together. So what was the idea of the style the Kings were supposed to play? They had a plan. It just hasn't quite worked out to what we know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do agree with Ryno. He made a great point during all season that Fox needs to be a little bit better and kind of be playing that pick and roll game with Sabonis. Monk is great at doing that, but it's just not Fox's game. I don't know if he can improve on that, hopefully, but to have that combination, Fox Sabonis be a better combo and to be, just to be better together for the starters. But I just think that I don't know, like I just want to see a better team, like some changes with like Herder and Barnes, just some better pieces. And I just think that if we have another playmaker, maybe one or more, like 2 more playmakers, they don't have to be great. But like I mentioned before, players like Rui Hachimura, stuff like that, that I think it'll make Fox look better. It won't put so much pressure on Fox, because that's the problem, I think. I know he played bad in that second half in that Pelicans game, but no one else could do anything. So you just got to look at both sides, kind of thing.
Yep, very true.
It's fair.
Good stuff, Zach.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Zach.
it.
Take care.
But it's fun to talk. It's fun to talk about all these scenarios.
Yeah.
But I think we all have different opinions, and that's great. And I think it's nice to hear different ideas. But I think that the vast majority of us, even on the chat line, agree that this team needs to make some changes. Now, we're not saying that it has to be Sabonis, it has to be Fox, it has to be Keegan Murray, but we are saying, I think most people agree, you got to do something here. You got to definitely bring a new influx of players to a degree into this roster.
Yeah, and you got to be proactive, Grant. You can't be reactive. The Kings have been far too reactive the last 2 years. They've got to make the move. They can't wait to make a reactionary move.
And if they keep their pick at 13, it's unrealistic to think that you're going to get a player at 13 that's going to come in and help you this year. Could you get a Tyrese Halliburton? Yeah, but even Tyrese in his first year wasn't that guy. So, if you're thinking that, gee, you got the first round pick at number 13 and that player is going to come in and really help you in the first year, probably not. Okay, the chances of that happening are very, very low. So keep that in mind.
But doesn't having a 13th pick, and let's assume the 13th pick stays with Sacramento, doesn't that even tip the scales more to even looking at Fox in that position? Because it's going to take a couple years, like you just said, to develop them. And when you're talking about a window, that's in line with Keegan.
Yeah.
Let's assume you have Monk. It's in line with Monk, Sabonis. I mean, the bottom line is De'Aaron Fox is an isolation point guard. Sacramento doesn't want to see that. He's an isolation point guard.
Yeah. Well, you also have an owner. He doesn't want to hear anything about 2 or 3 years. Okay. And so I'm just telling you that there's a lot going on. Well, listen, it's always fun doing these shows. Don't forget Ryan tomorrow at 2:00. All right. So he's got his show at 2, and we'll be coming on and doing more shows like this. And I'm going to be doing shows here. Make sure you subscribe if you have not already done so. Please give us a thumbs up. We greatly appreciate that. But I know one thing, Ryan, it's going to be a fun off season because I think that, especially if you lose Monk, then you got some real problems.
You do. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Let's hope we have beautiful golf weather for Monk if he's going to be hanging there until he makes the decision. But Grant, we'll be here to cover it either way it rolls.
Appreciate everyone. Enjoy the rest of your night. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.